My name is Anita Tucker. I'm originally from New York City, from Brooklyn. My husband's from Cleveland, Ohio. We came on Aliyah in 1969 as a young couple, and we lived in Beersheba for 7 years. And then we decided we needed a new challenge for our children, and we were sent by the government of Israel to an area that was going to be built up called Gush Katif in the Gaza Strip. And there I lived for 29 years. I had children that were born there, grandchildren that were born there, and I really hoped that I would have great-grandchildren that would be born there. I still do. I was a farmer. I grew many different types of vegetables and flowers. The last years I was a celery grower. And I'm looking forward to being able to work again. The last moments in Netzach Hazani were the most difficult of all the time of the struggle to try to keep our home. We were having an ethical struggle that we thought everyone would join the bandwagon for it, because certainly it's not ethical to take close to 10,000 people out of their home when you know the terror is going to be destroyed and nothing is prepared for them as an alternative. And in my own home, I packed nothing because I felt like I had to give God a little extra time to perhaps change His mind. I packed nothing in my home. And 15 soldiers marched to the Tucker family house, 15 Air Force officers wearing the famous symbols that were prepared by psychologists to try to help us leave more quickly and identify with the symbols, the flag of Israel, the blue and white that we know are the symbols of Judaism, the menorah, the candelabra that is the symbol of the Holy Temple, the symbol of the Knesset of Israel. And with those symbols, they marched 15 soldiers to our home. The plan was 3 soldiers will knock on the door, try to convince the Tucker family to leave easily without too much of a protest. If that didn't work, another 3 soldiers would try. If that didn't work, another 3 soldiers, and so on and so forth. Certainly 15 Air Force officers with these symbols on their chests would be able to convince the Tucker family to leave quickly and easily. In fact, all 15 soldiers were pushed into our house and had to sit around our dining room table and listen to us talk. I told them how we came to live in Israel, because it's the homeland of the Jewish people, because I didn't want to be a refugee as my parents and my grandparents had been, and that the cursed land that the Arabs around us, our neighbors, our acquaintances, had told us this is the cursed land, and the last people that ever grown anything here were Abraham and Isaac. And this cursed land turned into a bountiful land. We were very successful in agriculture. Our produce reached all over Europe, in the States, and told them and talked and talked and talked and talked, and nothing helped. After 2 hours of talking, not a tear fell from the eyes of the soldiers, not a muscle moved on their faces. They were like robots with a glass wall in front of them. And except for the highest officer, who every once in a while would look at his watch and say, "Mrs. Tucker, at 12:00, you're going to have to leave your house, you're going to have to leave your home, you're going to have to leave your town forever." After that, I don't know what happened to me. I'm not a crybaby. I don't cry very easily, but I began screaming like a real nut. I guess I hoped I would bring some emotion out of these soldiers. I started screaming, "My dear state of Israel, my dear state of Israel, my dear state of Israel, please, please, dear soldiers, give me a little hint, a little crumb, a little something that you understand that it's unethical to take 10,000 people out of their home when you know the terror is going to continue. I want so much that my children will continue believing, and my grandchildren will continue believing in the state of Israel, that it's the beginning of the redemption of the Jewish people, for the flourishing of the Jewish people." And I said to the soldiers, "Please, I want so much that your grandchildren, your children will continue believing in the state of Israel. Give me a hint, a little crumb, a little something that you understand. It's unethical to take 10,000 people when your orders are to take them up to the junction, and you have no idea what will happen to them afterwards." 2 hours of screaming like a nut. The head psychiatrist of IDF was brought in, the head doctor. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but not a tear fell from the eyes of the soldiers, not a muscle moved on their faces. They were like robots, like glass walls in front of them. The highest officer only looked at his watch every once in a while and said, "Mrs. Tucker, at 12:00, we're going to have to take you out of your house, out of your home. You're going to have to leave here forever." Then, what happened next, I can't understand how it happened, but my daughter, my oldest daughter, grabbed the first soldier inside, grabbed me, and pushed us both into my husband and I's bedroom and yelled at the soldiers, "For 29 years, my parents have slept on these beds. Right now, you have to give my mother something from your heart to take out with her." And she ran out of the room, slammed the door shut. I looked the soldier in the eyes, and he burst into tears. He ran out of the room, slammed the door shut. 2 minutes later, my daughter pushed in the next soldier. Same thing happened. 14 soldiers were pushed into the room, one after the other. Media outside the room as witnesses that this happened. And every one of the soldiers burst into tears and ran out of the room. I knew that we still had a state of Israel, that it was still the beginning of the flourishing of the Jewish people, and that we had a lot of work to do perhaps. Maybe we had to find a way of connecting better, maybe we had to find a way of communicating better, but there was a little flame lit in these soldiers, a little flame. It was the turn of the 15th soldier, the highest officer, Mr. 1200, was pushed into the room. Same story. I looked the guy in the eyes. "Mrs. Tucker at 1200, going to have to leave your house, leave your home, leave this place forever." This time, I walked out of the door, left him in the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and we began leaving our home truly for the last time, after 29 years. First to leave was my youngest son, who was an officer, and left the army a little bit previously to be part of the protest. He decided to put on his IDF dress uniform with his ranks as a sign of protest, and took out a penknife from his pocket and did his morning tearing as a custom in Judaism. When you leave a place of the land of Israel, you tear your cloth in a sign of mourning, and this is what he did on his IDF uniform. At that moment, my husband cried out with great pain, "God, I didn't educate my children all these years for this moment to happen." We started leaving the path, walking with soldiers on both sides of us, my children, my grandchildren, and suddenly my husband remembered that he had forgot his talit and his tefillin, his talis and tefillin in the house, his phylacteries and his talit, and he asked, in his prayer shawl, and he asked the soldiers if he can have permission to go back into his own home. He opened the door of the house, and there he sees Mr. 1200, the highest Air Force officer there, leaning on our dining room table, right here on this table, and crying out in great pain and crying loudly bitter tears. And he came back and told me, and I felt that truly God had given me a personal present, that we still have a state of Israel, that it's still the beginning of the redemption of the people of Israel, and then there's a lot of work to do, to connect, to touch, but there's a little flame lit in every one of those soldiers. And 3 years have passed since our homes, our businesses, our lifetimes were turned into a pile of rubble. Nothing left, just a pile of rubble. And the only answer to destruction is construction, and we hope to build anew. Right now I'm living in an interim caravilla site. After we were thrown out of Gush Katif, we lived for 11 months in different youth hostels, hotel rooms, wandered about quite a bit. And eventually, since there was no solution really prepared for the people to build anew, as we had been promised, the government decided to put up a temporary caravan site, and that's where I'm living right now. This site was built 2 years ago and is intended to be destroyed in another year. Everything in the house, everyone's fixed it up beautifully, but in fact everything is very flimsy. We have a lot of sewage flowing in the streets very often, water pipes busting, and very cheap materials we use to build these caravillas. But the people themselves have fixed them up as if it's their home forever, because our souls, just like we all like to wear lovely clothing to dress our souls, our personal souls, and make us look nice and pleasant, our family souls were dying for a beautiful covering. And after wandering around in the hotels and the youth hostels, everyone felt that they had to fix up these caravillas, even if it's only for 3 years, the best they could, so that their family would have a dress to its soul. And it's going to be destroyed in another year. As of now, we haven't finalized our agreement with the government as to a new place to build anew, mainly because the government is asking us to pay $2 million to acquire a shortfall that they have on the acquisition of the land. And they're asking us to pay this money beyond our building our own homes and building our own farms again. We are being asked for money to acquire the land. Our children now are sort of like marionette puppets. They have no past, no future, and they're sort of hanging in the air without a base. And I think every young person has to have a base, has to feel secure. You cannot live in the stomach of a question mark for such a long time. No one thought that it would take 3 years for the communities of Gush Katif to be able to build anew and be back into business again as farmers and whatever everyone was doing.